Hello, as you know, my name is Kindson Munonye, your instructor in project management body of knowledge for today. Today we are going to examine sequence activities. Previously on this knowledge area, project time management, we looked at define activities, the process of taking the work packages and breaking them down into activities, and then providing the activity list, activity attributes, and the milestone list. Today we are going to be looking at sequence the activities, having to do with creating relationships between these activities. Sequence activities is a process of identifying and documenting relationships among the project activities, and the key benefit of this process is that it identifies the logical sequence of work to obtain the greatest efficiency given all project constraints. Every activity and milestones except the first and the last should be connected to at least one predecessor with a finish to start, start to start logical relationship, and at least one successor with a finish to start or finish to finish logical relationship. Sequencing can be performed by using project management software or by using manual or automated techniques. Let's now take a look at the inputs, tools and techniques and outputs of sequence activities. For the input we have the schedule management plan, the project scope statement, the activity list, activity attributes and milestone list, enterprise environmental factors and organizational process assets. Tools and techniques are Precedence Diagramming Method, is also called PDM, Dependency Determination, and then leads and lags. Outputs of sequence activities are schedule network diagram and project document updates. Let's now look at these inputs and other items and see why they are necessary, and that will help us to be able to remember these ITTOs. Schedule management plan is necessary for sequence activities because it identifies the scheduling method and tool to be used for the project, which will guide how the activities will be sequenced. Activity list, for sure you have to sequence something. What are you going to sequence? The activities. The activity list provides a list of activities. All scheduled activities required are provided by the activity list, which have to be sequenced. So dependencies and other constraints for these activities can influence sequencing activities. Activity attributes are necessary details about activities, which includes the activity successor, the resources needed, the predecessor, and many other details, who is to perform the activity, and so on. Milestone list is list of all milestones for the project, which may be, this might also influence sequence activities. Project scope statement is necessary because it contains the project's or product scope description, which includes product characteristics. So for you to sequence, you need to understand know the characteristics of these activities. Okay, so that will enable you to sequence in the right way. So such characteristics like the physical layout of a plant to be constructed or subsystem interfaces might affect how it is sequenced. Other information from the project scope statement includes project deliverables, project constraints, and project assumptions. All this can affect the sequence activities. Alright. While these effects are often apparent in the activity list, the product scope description is generally reviewed to ensure accuracy. We need enterprise environmental factors to sequence activities, for instance, government or industry standards, project management information system, scheduling tool, and the work authorization system of the organization. Alright, let's now go to some of the this is organizational process assets which affect sequence activities, project files, existing formal and informal activity planning related policies, etc., etc. Maybe you'll pause the video and take a look at these items I've listed here. These are organizational process assets that may affect sequence activities. Let's now look at the ITTOs. We start with the first one, Precedence Diagramming Method. Okay. Now, Precedence Diagramming Method, PDM for short, is a technique used for constructing a schedule model. Remember, we mentioned the schedule model is the project schedule including the data and other necessary details. So PDM is used to construct a schedule model in which activities are represented by nodes and are graphically linked by one or more logical relationships to show the sequence in which the activities are to be performed. In time, I'm going to show you a diagram, a schedule model, and see how precedence diagramming method works. Activity on nodes is one method of representing precedence diagram. So we have activities on the nodes and arrows between the activities representing the relationship of precedence of these activities. So the precedence diagramming method is always used in project management software packages. Precedence diagramming method includes 4 types of dependencies. Dependencies also logical relationship, and they are finish to start, start to finish to finish, start to start, and start to finish. We are going to examine this after now in the next screens. A predecessor activity is an activity that logically comes before a dependent activity in a schedule. A successor activity is a dependent activity that logically comes after. So we have predecessor before the activity, a successor is the one following it after it has been performed. Let's now look at these logical relationships in detail. The first one is finish to start. This finish to start has to do with that a successor activity cannot start until a predecessor activity has finished. For instance, the award ceremony cannot start until the race has finished. I think this is a clear one. We can also say the house cannot be roofed until the walls have been erected. Finish to finish, a logical relationship in which the successor activity cannot finish until the predecessor activity has finished. Writing a document which a predecessor is required to finish before editing the document can finish. Then we have start to start, a logical relationship in which the successor activity cannot start until a predecessor activity has started. For instance, the level concrete cannot begin until foundation has been poured. Then we have start to finish. It's quite rare, but I'll look for explanation for it. Says that it's a relationship in which the successful activity cannot finish until a predecessor activity has started. For example, the security guard shift cannot finish until the second security guard shift starts. I think this is a clever one. Alright, in PDM, finish to start is the most commonly used type of relationship, and the start to finish is very rarely used, but is included to present a complete list of PDM relationship types. So PDM is illustrated here, as you can see. Alright, so we have relationship between activity A and activity B. And the first one, let me get the pen so that I'll be able to highlight. I'm using a highlighter. Okay, no, I want to use a pen. So the first one, which is the finish to start, which is this one. So we have the arrow, because we say is activity on node. We have activity A on this node and activity B on this node, and we have arrow pointing from activity A to activity B, and that shows a finish to start relationship, meaning activity A has to finish before B starts. Then we have an arrow pointing from beginning or from start of activity A to the start of activity B, or is naturally start to start. We have pointing from the end of activity A to the end of activity B, that is finish to finish, and you can guess the remaining one. So this is how PDM works. It uses activity on nodes with arrow between these activities. Alright, the next tool and technique for sequence activities is dependency determination. Dependencies has to do with the relationship between two activities. Okay, how will I explain it? Dependency meaning one activity depending on some factor. Okay, let's try to use the 4 attributes to explain it. We have mandatory external dependencies, mandatory internal dependencies, discretionary external dependencies, and discretionary internal dependencies. So let's start with the first one. Mandatory dependencies are those dependencies that are legally or contractually required, inherent to the nature of the work. Mandatory dependencies is mandatory. As the name implies, you cannot change it. Let's try to give more, explain it a little more. It involves physical limitations, such as on a construction project, it's impossible to erect a superstructure until after the foundation has been built. On an electronics project where a prototype has been built before and can be tested. Let me give a more simple example. For instance, if we have 2 activities, structured cabling of the office. Before you test the network of equipment, the switches on the network, you have to cable the office first. That is mandatory. You cannot change it. Or maybe you have to do some documentation with a government agency before you start working on a particular parcel of land. So mandatory is mandatory. Mandatory dependencies are also called hard logic or hard dependencies. Technical dependencies are likely not mandatory, and the project team determines which dependencies are mandatory during the process of sequencing activities. So dependency determination happens during sequence activities and is a tool and technique for this process. Then we have discretionary dependencies, is also called preferred logic, soft logic, or preferential logic. They are established based on a knowledge of best practices within a particular application area or some unusual aspect of the project where a specific sequence is desired, even though there may be other acceptable sequences. Discretionary dependencies should be fully documented, since they can create arbitrary total floats and can limit scheduling options at a later time. When fast tracking techniques are employed, these discretionary dependencies should be reviewed and considered for modification or removal. And the project team determines which dependencies are discretionary during sequence activity process. Now we have external dependencies involve a relationship between project activities and non-project activities. They are usually outside the project team's control. For instance, a testing activity in a software project may be dependent on the delivery of hardware from an external source. Or government environmental hearings may need to be held before site preparation can begin on a construction project. Again, the project team determines which activities or which dependencies are external. Then we have internal dependencies, involve a precedence relationship between project activities that are inside the project team's control. The third tool and technique used for sequence activities is the leads and lags. A lead is the amount of time a successive activity can be advanced with respect to the predecessor activity. For instance, on a project to construct a new office building, the landscaping could be scheduled to start 2 weeks prior to the scheduled punch list completion. Okay, so it means that if you have 2 activities, one comes after the other, but a little time before the first one finishes, you start the next one. So you are not waiting for the predecessor to finish, you start the successor. So that time, both of them are in parallel. You are working on one while the first one has not finished. That period of time is called a lead. The amount of time whereby a successor activity can be advanced with respect to the predecessor. Alright? Leads are often represented as negative value for lag in scheduling software. A lag is the amount of time whereby a successor activity can be delayed or will be delayed with respect to the predecessor. For example, A technical writing team may begin editing the draft of a large document 15 days after they begin writing it. Or maybe if you paint a wall, you have to wait for, if you after plastering a wall, okay, then you have to wait for 2 days for it to dry before you start painting. So this time that the successor activity has to wait or be delayed is the lag. The project management team also determine which dependencies requires a lead or a lag. Use of leads and lags should not replace the schedule logic. Alright, let's proceed. Example here, we have the minus 2 weeks, meaning a lead of 2 weeks, meaning that the landscape building lot, okay, can start 2 weeks before the complete punch list is completed. Okay, then we have the other one, a lag of 15 days. Okay, so indicated in this way. So I hope you understand it. If not, spend some time getting used to it. Sequence activity outputs, we have the project schedule network diagram, and that is a graphical representation of the logical relationship, also referred to as dependencies among the project activities. So you lay out all the activities and use arrows to connect them, and it provides the project schedule network diagram. A project schedule network diagram is produced manually or by using a software. It can include full project detail or have one or more summary activities. A summary activity is also called hammock activities. A summary narrative can accompany the diagram and describe the basic approach used to sequence activities. Any unusual activity sequences within the network diagram should be checked or described. Here is an example of project schedule network diagram. We have activity A, B, C, D down to KL. Okay, so we have here we have FS plus 15, and that is a lead of 15. Same, we have a lag of 15, meaning that G must wait for 15 days after F has completed, because we have this finish to start relationship and G must wait for 15 days. So we have between H and I, we have start to start. It means that after H have started, then 10 days after I can then start. So this is an example of project schedule network diagram. Another output of the sequence activity process is the project document update. For instance, activity lists, activity attributes, milestone lists, and risk register might have to be updated in the course of sequence activities. This is how we are rounding off our discussion on sequence activities. I hope this has been informative. I would like to just make a recap. Sequence activity is the process where you arrange the activities in a logical way to define relationship between them. And sequence activity uses 3 tools and techniques, and that is dependency determination, leads and lags, and precedence diagramming method. Outputs of sequence activities is project document update and project schedule network diagram. I would like to take you back to the ITTO's page so that you spend some time getting used to it. Okay. So these are the ITTOs. I would like to thank you for joining me, and please join me in my next presentation as I'm going to begin my discussion on estimate activity resources.